I was sent to northern Yang to marry their emperor in place of the princess. It was not until 5 years later, when the southern Chu army sacked the Yang capital, that I finally returned to my homeland, only to find that a doppelganger had taken my place, stolen everything that belonged to me. My parents had become her parents, my home her home, even my childhood sweetheart, the man I was once betrothed to, had fallen in love with her. And riding on the glory of my sacrifice, marrying into northern Yang in the princess's stead, she had become a frequent guest of the palace, a beloved favorite of the nobility, showered with endless honors and favors. After I returned, she poisoned my tea. I endured the searing agony tearing through my insides, watching her hide behind my former fiancé, sneering triumphantly. I drew a guard's sword and charged at them, screaming, if I was going to die, I'd drag them all to hell with me. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the very day the southern Chu army breached the Yang capital. I pressed the blade to the northern Yang emperor's throat, waiting for our troops to storm the Hall of Supreme Harmony. Under their stunned gazes, I raised my chin, my eyes glinting with cold resolve. Great General, you have kept this princess waiting far too long. We servants greet your Royal Highness's return to the court. They knelt in unison. Capturing the northern Yang emperor single-handedly, my meritorious service was even greater than in my past life. Thus, when I returned to southern Chu, the emperor himself led all his civil and military officials out of the city to welcome me, a celebration for the triumphant army and a homecoming for the Princess Changning, who had sacrificed herself for the nation. 5 years ago, the emperor could not bear to send his own daughter away. He planned to choose a maiden from among his ministers' families instead. My father, craving power and wealth, offered me up as a sacrifice. The emperor adopted me as his foster daughter, bestowing upon me the title Changning. I curtsied gracefully, my voice steady. Father Emperor, your daughter has lived up to your trust. I assisted the great general in vanquishing northern Yang and capturing the deposed emperor. The emperor beamed with approval. Good girl, you have earned the greatest merit of all. That was exactly what I wanted to hear. From this day forward, no one could deny that I was a hero of southern Chu. That night, a grand feast was held in the palace to welcome me and the returning soldiers. I stood at the emperor and empress's side, accompanying them to their seats. My place was set at the head of all the princesses. I wanted everyone to see I was not a pawn to be discarded. All the suffering and humiliation I endured in northern Yang had now been forged into medals of honor upon my return to southern Chu. Anyone who dared to look down on me, who dared to insult me with a single word, would be committing a grave sin. My gaze swept over the nobles, officials, young masters, and ladies below, locking eyes with Song Fengli. Her face bore a striking 6 or 7 point resemblance to mine. A slight curve of her eyebrows and eyes exuded 1,000 kinds of charm. She looked innocent and harmless, but she was the very woman who had poisoned me in my past life. Midway through the feast, the emperor asked me affectionately, Changning, your marriage alliance was a great service to the state. What reward do you desire? I replied without hesitation, my tone open and forthright. Your Majesty, I wish to beg for a mansion of my own, a place where I may live out my days in peace and comfort. Those who were sharp-witted could hear the hidden meaning. I was alluding to my parents' lack of kindness toward me. Numerous odd glances fell upon my parents, making them squirm in their seats like they were sitting on pins and needles. They deserved every bit of it. Besides, this was merely the beginning. In my past life, after I returned safely to the capital, they looked down on me for having been the northern Yang emperor's woman. They even wanted me to kill myself to preserve my chastity. Song Fengli framed me again and again with her clumsy schemes. Could my parents really not see through them? When you thought about it carefully, they were far from innocent. The emperor's eyes darkened as he shot a glance at my father, then smiled and said to me, Your wish is granted. I knelt to thank him for his kindness. The empress spoke up. Changning was barely 15 when she left for the marriage alliance. Now she is in the prime of her youth, Your Majesty. Perhaps you might arrange a marriage for her. The emperor nodded thoughtfully, then turned to me. What do you think, Changning? My gaze swept the crowd below once more. When it landed on Meng Huiqing, he quickly lowered his head, averting his eyes as if terrified I would see him and cling to him, demanding to be his wife. We had known each other since childhood, sweethearts since we were young. Our engagement had been called off because of the marriage alliance. I could have accepted and understood it if he had fallen in love with someone else, but he had to fall for that doppelganger, shielding and indulging her as she framed me again and again. Even knowing full well that she had poisoned me, he still protected her behind his back, watching coldly as the poison coursed through my veins. As I writhed in agony, my features contorted in pain, that burning sensation. As if my internal organs were being scorched by fire, it still made me gasp for breath whenever I thought about it. I took a deep breath and said slowly, having just returned to my homeland, I wish to rest for a while before discussing anything else. The emperor agreed. The topic was dropped, for now. It was clear that many people breathed a sigh of relief. Princess Jiaoning sat beside me throughout the feast, never uttering a word. It was not until the banquet ended that she chased after me. Following me out, just like when we were children, she called me timidly, Sister Xiangyi. Xiangyi, my real name. Shen Xiangyi, not my title. Changning. 5 years ago, it was Princess Jiaoning who was supposed to go to the marriage alliance. Her birth mother, Consort Liu, knelt outside the imperial study for 2 whole hours, begging the emperor to retract his order. In the end, I was the one sent in her place. Jiaoning hung her head, her voice soft. I'm sorry. I stared at her bowed form. Narrowing my eyes slightly, I did harbor resentment toward her, resentment that she had enjoyed the glory of being a princess, yet refused to shoulder the responsibilities that came with it. Otherwise, I would not have been sacrificed. But compared to resenting her, I hated my own parents even more. They had abandoned me for wealth and power, and to add insult to injury, they had brought in that doppelganger to torment me, to kill me. Sister Xiangyi, I know I was selfish and cowardly. It was my fault that you had to go to the marriage alliance. I do not ask for your forgiveness, I only wish to do something for you. I looked at her steadily. Anything. She hesitated for a moment, then met my gaze firmly. Anything. I said a single word. Good. Jiaoning's face lit up with joy instantly, her eyes shining with excitement as she looked at me. I twitched the corner of my mouth, but there was no warmth in my smile. It was her guilt toward me that had led her to help Song Fangli at every turn, allowing a woman of unknown origins to become the most admired young lady in the capital, adored by all. Now, I would watch and see how long Song Fangli could maintain that illusion of being the center of attention. At the palace gate, the entire Shen family was waiting for me. Father wore a stern expression, while Mother and Song Fangli sat in the carriage. When they saw me approaching, not only did they make no move to come forward and greet me, they even looked at me with reproach. Rongyue, the palace made a sign to me by the empress, stood at my side. She raised her voice and announced, Her Royal Highness the Princess has returned to the mansion. All members of the Shen family shall pay their respects with a half kowtow. Father stared at me in disbelief, but seeing the imposing entourage behind me, he had no choice but to bend down and bow. At the sound of Father's voice, Mother and Song Fangli finally hurried out of the carriage to curtsy to me. Under their suppressed anger, I let out a cold chuckle and stepped onto the most luxurious carriage in the Shen family's fleet. Song Fangli tried to help Mother board the carriage as well. Rongyue blocked their way. Her Royal Highness is in this carriage. Lady Shen and Miss Song shall take another. The faces of everyone in the Shen family turned ashen. I loved seeing them grind their teeth in hatred, yet forced to submit to me, counting from this life. It had been 5 years since I last set foot in the Shen mansion. This place had once been my home, but now, the courtyard I had decorated with such care belonged to Song Fangli. My home had become hers. In my past life, Mother had told me that she had personally prepared another courtyard for me, having missed my family day and night for 5 long years. I had believed her words and did not insist on moving back to my original courtyard. This time, I ordered my servants to throw all of Song Fangli's belongings out into the yard. Seeing this, Song Fangli rushed forward to stop them. Turning to my parents to accuse me, if sister wanted my courtyard, she only had to say so. How could she throw my things out like this? She is being far too tyrannical. I made a single gesture. A matron stepped forward and slapped Song Fangli hard across both cheeks. Song Fangli burst into tears. Her face streaked with tears, truly a picture of delicate beauty, like pear blossoms after rain. So I decided I would make her cry even harder. With a single glance from me, Rongyue declared, "For speaking disrespectfully to Her Royal Highness, the punishment is 20 strokes of the palm." The matron proceeded to continue the beating. Father and mother paced around anxiously, wringing their hands. They pointed fingers at me, burning with rage yet daring not to utter a single word of protest, eventually lowering their hands without saying anything. I shot them a casual glance and turned to enter the room to rest. I woke up before dawn. For 5 years in Northern Yang, I had been forced to wait on the Northern Yang Emperor like a slave, waking up early every day to brew his porridge and tea. If I failed to personally attend to his every need, I would be sent to serve even more men. Even though I had been given a second chance, even though I had returned to Southern Chu, the scars on my body could not be completely erased, and the habits I had formed were not so easily broken. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, until sunlight streamed through the window panes. After washing up, a maid from Mother's quarters came to deliver a message. She swaggered over and scolded me for sleeping in. For failing to go pay my respects to my parents, I picked up my teacup calmly. Without hesitation, Rongyue slapped the maid hard across the face. This maid had always been arrogant and overbearing, bullying others in Mother's name. In my past life, when I first returned to the mansion, she had spread rumors behind my back, calling me a ruined woman who should kill herself to preserve the family's honor. I had been sent to the marriage alliance by imperial order, but in her eyes, that had been a sin. I immediately ordered her to be punished, but my own parents had stopped me, blaming me for being cruel and ruthless. This time, after being slapped, the maid jumped to her feet, screaming, "I am Lady Shen's maid." Rongyue let out a cold laugh. "I am the head maid assigned to Her Royal Highness by Her Majesty the Empress." At the mention of the Empress, the maid instantly wilted, all her arrogance vanishing. I ordered my servants to bind her and drag her to the front courtyard to receive a public flogging. Mother and Song Fangli arrived in a hurry. The maid saw them and cried out like she had seen a lifeline. "Madam, miss, please save me." Just like in my past life, Mother began to berate me. She looked at me with heartbreak and said, "How could I have given birth to a monster like you?" I lifted my eyelids lazily, reminding her coldly, "If it were not for me, would you all be enjoying this immense wealth and glory now? I sacrificed myself for the nation in the marriage alliance. Even the Emperor says I am a hero. Why, in Mother's eyes, have I become a sinner? Does Mother mean to say that the Emperor is wrong?" Mother paled with fright, quickly shaking her head and denying it vehemently. Father finally rushed back. I helpfully told him how Mother had committed the crime of disrespecting the Emperor, daring to say that the Emperor was wrong. Father raised his hand and slapped Mother across the face. I signaled to the eunuchs to release her. The two of them immediately began to brawl, clawing and hitting each other. The sight of them turning on each other like dogs fighting over a bone was truly amusing. It was a shame I had never seen this in my past life. In my past life, I had been far too caught up in the illusion of family affection. allowing them to walk all over me. This life, I would be merciful enough to have the matrons teach them some proper rules. I was a princess, in the Shun mansion. It was not I who had to pay morning and evening respects to others, it was they who had to bow and greet me. In the afternoon, Meng Huiqing came to see me. He showered me with tender care, eager to rekindle our past romance. I picked at my fingernails, asking casually, "What about Song Fangli?" He said earnestly, "Xiangyi, she looks so much like you. For these past 5 years, I have missed you every waking moment. Only when I looked at her could I ease this longing in my heart a little. You have always been the only one in my heart. Now that you are back, how could I ever think of anyone else?" Did he not realize how contradictory his words were? But it did not matter anyway. The point was, he actually dared to use his looks to seduce me, to make such a great sacrifice. His motives must be far from pure. In my old way of thinking, I would have played along with him, pretending to be interested, just to find out his true intentions. But I was utterly disgusted by him. I raised my eyebrows, sneering coldly, "You shameless wretch, daring to covet this princess. Guards, drag him to the imperial clan court." Did he think I would treat him kindly? That would be a total waste of this second chance at life. The guards hauled Meng Huiqing off to the imperial clan court. I sent Rungyue with them to explain the situation to the clan leader. No one was allowed to stop them along the way. My parents and Meng Huiqing's parents all came to beg for mercy, but I remained unmoved, completely indifferent to their pleas. I would rather zone out than spare them a single glance. Meng Huiqing was merely reprimanded by the clan leader and then released. I never expected to have him locked up for long over such a trivial matter. This was just an appetizer, a small blow to tarnish his reputation a little. Let's see how he could still pretend to be that upright, virtuous gentleman from now on. A few days later, rumors about me began to spread in the capital. They said that during my time in northern Yang, I had shared my lips with thousands of men, stripped naked to dance for northern Yang's nobles, and even had 5 or 6 miscarriages. No matter who was behind these rumors, I went straight to the palace, bursting into tears in front of the emperor and empress. I was the emperor's foster daughter, bearing the legitimate title of Princess Changning. I had married into an enemy state for the sake of my country and personally captured their emperor. The emperor himself had praised me, calling me a hero. Now these rumors were circulating. It was nothing short of a slap in the emperor's face. Moreover, they only served to highlight how much I had sacrificed for southern Chu, how much suffering I had endured in northern Yang. I deserved to be well compensated for all of it. So how could these rumors hurt me? Oh right, if I had been weak-hearted, if I had cared about a woman's reputation, I might have really hanged myself in shame. But I had gone to that marriage alliance for the nation. I was a hero. I deserved to be rewarded by the southern Chu court and revered by the people. The emperor showered me with gold, silver, jewelry, and fine silks. His imperial grace was boundless. As I left the palace, I was surrounded by nothing but sycophantic flattery. Even my father avoided my gaze when he saw me, shrinking away as if I were a plague. I held my head high, my eyes blazing with pride. Even if those rumors were true, so what? The ones who should be ashamed were those cowardly men hiding behind their petty slander of women. Within 2 days, the Ministry of Justice traced the source of the rumors. Meng Huiqing confessed it was he who had ordered people to spread them. He had wanted to get revenge, to ruin my reputation. Meng Huiqing was dismissed from his official post. His father was also reprimanded by the emperor and had his salary docked for a year. The princess mansion was completed. I chose an auspicious day to move in. Gifts congratulating me on my housewarming poured in endlessly. I held a feast to thank everyone. The mansion was packed with guests, the courtyard bustling with activity. My parents and that doppelganger also came. Mother walked up to me, clearing her throat. "Xiangyi, really, with so many nobles here, How can you sit alone on the main seat? I narrowed my eyes, staring at her coldly, but emboldened by her status as my mother, she was completely oblivious to the warning in my gaze. Insisting on putting on airs in front of me, I let out a cold laugh. 5 years ago, when father sent me off to the marriage alliance, what did you say to me? Mother's eyes darted about nervously, glancing left and right, taking an involuntary step back, in front of everyone. I had no qualms about helping her refresh her memory. You said that since you and father had given birth to me and raised me, sacrificing myself for the Shun family's wealth and glory would be my way of repaying your kindness. From that day onward, you would pretend you never had a daughter like me. You also said that I was vicious and cruel, and that your greatest regret was not throwing me to the ground and killing me right after I was born. A gasp echoed through the hall, followed by a buzz of whispered conversations. Besides, no matter what people said behind my back, I was Princess Changning, the foster daughter of the reigning emperor. Any slander against me was, in essence, a crime of disrespecting the imperial family. Mother's face turned bright red with embarrassment. She wanted to fly into a rage at me, but dared not. Finally slumping back into her seat in defeat, father conveniently stayed out of it, making no attempt to comfort mother. Instead, he told her to behave herself, pretending to be the reasonable one. Pathetic, really. Song Fengli walked over to Zhaoning, speaking to her in a familiar, affectionate tone. Your Royal Highness, it has been quite some time since we last met. I have just learned how to make 2 kinds of pastries from Jiangnan. I would be honored if you would taste them. She was trying to use Zhaoning to solidify her position. 5 years was a long time, long enough for Song Fengli to forget her true identity, long enough to forget that her place among these imperial relatives was only granted because of me. Zhaoning did not even spare her a kind look, saying coldly, if you wish to work in the imperial kitchen, you can ask the princes and ministers present here, see which one of them is willing to recommend you. Song Fengli froze for a moment, then lowered her eyes slightly, a single tear hanging from the corner of her eye, threatening to fall at any moment. She looked even more delicate and pitiful, enough to stir compassion in anyone's heart. Unfortunately, I had never been one to pity such delicate beauties. I let out a mocking laugh, making no effort to hide my contempt for her. Then I picked up the peeled orange in front of me, broke it in half, and said to Zhaoning, Zhaoning, I can't finish this. You can have half. Zhaoning's eyes lit up instantly. She skipped over to me happily, saying sweetly, thank you, Sister Xiangyi. I smiled with satisfaction as I watched Song Fengli's face turn deathly pale. I curved my lips into a grin, motioning for Zhaoning to sit beside me. She looked utterly flattered as she sat down demurely. Zhaoning's attitude spoke volumes. I wanted everyone to know I was back. Nobody could ever take my place. Let's see who would still fawn over Song Fengli. Scrambling to offer her wealth and a bright future from now on. When Song Fengli returned to her seat, everyone who had been chatting and laughing with her fell silent immediately. Mother took her hand and whispered to her. Her expression alternating between sympathy and anger. It was truly laughable. I had endured untold hardships, while they lived a life of luxury and ease off the wealth I had earned for them. Yet instead of being grateful to me, they had wanted me dead. Was there any justice in this world? I could not help but wonder, was I really their biological daughter? It was as if Song Fengli was their real child, and I was just some orphan they had picked up. Song Fengli found herself a new patron. Among her protectors was now the 4th prince. She swaggered over to me, falsely accusing me of pushing her into the lake. In that case, I might as well make her accusation come true. I grabbed a fire poker, pressed her head underwater, forcing her to drink her fill. She threatened me. Shen Xiangyi, how dare you treat me like this? The 4th prince will never let you get away with it. Unfortunately for her, I was the kind of person who feared nothing, not even someone who had nothing to lose. Every time she tried to lift her head above water, I pushed her back down. I curled my lips into a smirk, curious why the fourth prince hasn't appeared yet, why he isn't here to play the hero and save the damsel in distress. She glared at me hatefully, her strength all but gone. I graciously told her the truth. Because he's currently busy flirting with another beauty. Fear finally appeared on Song Fangli's face as she screamed for help, but the one who came to her rescue was Meng Huiqing. Even though he knew full well that Song Fangli was involved with the fourth prince, he still rushed to her defense, pulling her out of the water with a look of deep concern and wrapping his outer robe around her shivering body. He looked at me with heartfelt sorrow and said, "Xiangyi, we grew up together, childhood sweethearts. If you have any grievances against me, take them out on me, don't hurt others. Very well, you can go die first." Without hesitation, I raised the fire poker in my hand and beat him mercilessly. Meng Huiqing grunted in pain, not daring to fight back. Song Fangli trembled like a leaf, tears streaming down her face. Watching them suffer filled me with joy, until the great general grabbed the fire poker from my hand and threw it away. A flicker of triumph flashed in Meng Huiqing's eyes. So that was why he hadn't fought back. He had been waiting for this moment all along. But did he think I would be afraid? 5 years ago, after the great general's defeat, he had personally led the wedding escort to send me to northern Yang for the marriage alliance. At the border between the two countries, I had only said one thing to him: I sacrifice myself to bring peace to the nation. Tell me, where then is the use for a general? The unyielding great general's eyes had turned red. He knelt down at my feet, swearing solemnly that he would rebuild his army and one day come to bring me back to Chu. 5 years later, the great general had kept his promise, leading his troops to conquer northern Yang. Upon returning triumphantly to the capital, the great general had taken special care of me. I could see clearly he was a man of strong sense of justice and responsibility, yet also stubbornly rigid in his ways. For the defeat 5 years ago and the subsequent marriage alliance, the great general had always blamed himself entirely. Thus, he felt deeply indebted to me. Song Fangli thanked the great general. Putting on that same pitiful, helpless act, Meng Huiqing also thanked him, gritting his teeth against the pain. Together, they looked like a pair of star-crossed lovers. While I was the arrogant, ruthless villain, the great general shook his head and sighed, then told Meng Huiqing and Song Fangli to leave. Once they were gone, he bowed to me and said, "Your Royal Highness, this humble minister has 2 sons. The eldest has rendered countless meritorious services on the battlefield and now holds the position of garrison general. The youngest has also achieved much in his studies and has just begun his official duties. Both are of marriageable age and still unwed." I froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. So the great general wanted to offer up one of his sons as a way to redeem me. I raised my eyebrows. There is a rule in this dynasty: princes consort are not allowed to hold real power. The loyal, patriotic great general replied without hesitation, charging into battle, fighting bravely against the enemy. It is indeed thrilling and glorious, but it is also a life of putting one's head on the line every day. If this humble minister's son is fortunate enough to marry your Royal Highness, he will no longer have to fight on the battlefield or stand guard in the bitter cold frontier passes. He can stay in the capital and live a life of ease and luxury as a prince consort. What greater joy could there be? I stared at him intently, but his expression was sincere, earnest. I could not detect even a hint of deceit in his words. He was a general who had fought countless battles. The defeat 5 years ago and the subsequent marriage alliance were the result of internal strife in the southern Chu court, which had scattered our military forces and allowed the enemy to defeat us one by one. It was not his fault, on the contrary. The fact that he had been able to rebuild his army and lead them to conquer northern Yang in these past 5 years was a testament to his exceptional ability. He had led his troops to bring me back to Chu. He had done me a great service, a great favor. He guarded the borders and defended the nation, his entire family renowned for their loyalty and heroism. He was the pillar of southern Chu, a hero in the hearts of the people. Since my rebirth, I've wanted to tear everyone apart, even snap at passing dogs, but when it came to the great general, I had no desire to make things difficult for him. I took a deep breath. Song Fengli jumped into the lake on her own, trying to frame me. I merely made her lie come true. She's latched onto the fourth prince. If I hadn't had someone detain him, she would have succeeded just now. If the fourth prince had come after me, I really wouldn't have known how to handle it. The great general remained silent. He still thought I was in the wrong. My eyes darkened as I turned to leave, but then his voice stopped me. Your Royal Highness should not have gotten your hands dirty. You need only give the order, and others will see it done. My footsteps halted, a smile tugged involuntarily at my lips. I'll keep that in mind. When I entered the palace to pay my respects, I ran into the fourth prince's consort in the empress's quarters. We had met several times before at palace banquets and noble family feasts. We weren't complete strangers. As I knelt to greet the empress, the fourth prince's consort knelt with me. It was clear she had something to say to me alone. She caught up to me, waving her attendants away to a distance. Then, as if passing along a piece of news, she said, "Chongning, the fourth prince intends to petition the emperor to make Song Fengli his secondary consort. I'm afraid she'll make endless trouble for you in the future." I replied without hesitation, "Miss Song is charming and lovely. His Royal Highness is truly fortunate." The words left the fourth prince's consort momentarily lost for words. After a long pause, she dropped her fake pleasantries and said sharply, "We both know exactly what kind of woman Song Fengli is. If she becomes a prince's secondary consort, you'll have to think twice before moving against her." I remained unyielding. I am a princess who sacrificed herself for the nation's marriage alliance. What can she possibly do to me? At worst, I'll just close my doors and live my own life. Chongning, please rest assured, consort, I will not hold a grudge against you or His Royal Highness because of Song Fengli. The fourth prince's consort finally grew anxious. Chongning, please help me. Song Fengli cannot be allowed into the prince's mansion. There we go. That was the proper attitude for someone asking for a favor. No one gets to use me as a pawn for free. I spoke slowly, deliberately. From what I know, the fourth prince already has one secondary consort, along with several concubines and bedservants. Why is it only Song Fengli you cannot tolerate? The fourth prince's consort looped her arm through mine, leaning in to whisper, "Earlier this year, at Princess Zhaoning's birthday banquet, I saw her with the second prince. They were in a compromising position." I turned my head slightly, studying her carefully. She continued, "The entire capital thinks Meng Huiqing sees her as your doppelganger, that they're a pair. The fact that she's hidden her relationship with the second prince so deeply, it makes me have to question her motives for getting close to the fourth prince. I had been gone for 5 years. Song Fengli had appeared after I left. In my past life, I'd had someone investigate her. Her background was as clean as a blank sheet of paper, and yet she was proficient in poetry, calligraphy, painting, and music, even well-versed in palace etiquette. Either she was a prodigy who mastered everything with a single lesson, or she was a spy. I took my leave of the fourth prince's consort. Turning back to the palace to request an audience with the emperor, I begged for an imperial edict to visit the Marquis of Anli, the deposed emperor of Northern Yang. After he was captured and brought to the Chu capital, the emperor, to stabilize the hearts of the Northern Yang people, had not executed him immediately. Instead, he'd conferred upon him the title of Marquis of Anli, confining him to Maple Bridge Villa. I showed my token, and the imperial guard stationed at the villa let me in. There he was, the deposed emperor, squinting his eyes as he lay on a reclining chair beneath a tree. He looked utterly relaxed and content. I let out a cold laugh. It's been quite some time since we last met, Marquis of Anley. You seem to have lost quite a bit of weight. His eyes snapped open, fixing on me intently. Then he returned my cold laugh. The princess, on the other hand, has filled out quite nicely. I sleep until the sun is high in the sky. Never lift a finger to dress or feed myself. No longer have to wait on anyone hand and foot. Life is indeed quite comfortable. He stared at me, saying nothing. I went on, I have some good news for you. Marquis, the people of Yang now live in peace and prosperity, singing praises of our emperor's diligent governance and benevolence. They even compose plays mocking the former deposed emperor of Northern Yang for his debauchery and tyranny. I emphasized the words deposed emperor heavily. His gaze turned sharp as he glared at me. I smiled sweetly, determined to infuriate him. He straightened his expression. Surely you didn't come all this way just to say these trivial, meaningless things. Of course not, I lied through my teeth. After a day as husband and wife, 100 days of gratitude linger. Naturally, I've been thinking of you, Marquis. I came specially to visit. He narrowed his eyes slightly, then suddenly chuckled. I've never been able to tell which of your words are true and which are lies, I said. You can trade one truth for another, one of yours for one of mine. He looked at me as if he saw right through me. This is your real purpose, isn't it? I did not deny it. Asking directly, how many spies did you plant in southern Chu? He said, so many I've lost count. But you have no need to worry. With Yang gone, they are nothing more than ordinary commoners now. I pondered the credibility of his words. He asked, during those 5 years, were you ever truly happy? Even for a moment? I told him the truth. No. He looked as if he'd been wounded. So you really were just flattering me, lying to me all along, in Northern Yang. I'd forced myself to learn the art of pretense overnight, transforming from a punching bag into a confidant who understood his every mood. If I hadn't waited on him well, if I hadn't kept him amused, the consequences would have been more than I could bear. Just thinking about those days in Northern Yang made me want to kill him. But he said, the moment you walked into the Hall of Supreme Harmony, I knew exactly what you were going to do. My country destroyed. My family ruined. Being able to help you one last time before I died was something I was willing to do. He spoke as if he'd really had genuine feelings for me. Unfortunately for him, I was no longer an innocent young girl who knew nothing of the world. I'd been abandoned by my family, killed, and given a second chance at life. His words could not fool me. Besides, in my past life, he had escaped, only to be shot to death by random arrows outside the Hall of Supreme Harmony. In this life, he hadn't had the chance to run. He should be thanking me. I pressed on. Do you remember, Marquis, a woman who looked very much like me? Was she also one of your spies? He stared at me blankly for a moment, then laughed. If she had looked like you, I would never have been willing to send her off to be a spy. I laughed too, circling around behind him, placing both hands on his neck and pressing down lightly. You dare kill me? He did not move. But I had observed him for 5 years. I could hear the faint trace of panic beneath his anger. I smiled, releasing my grip. I dare not. I'd only wanted to scare him a little, because he'd loved scaring me so much in the past. He'd said that if I was disobedient, if I wasn't good, he'd send me to the military camp. He'd also threatened to kill all the attendants who'd come with me to the marriage alliance, forcing me to bear the weight of their deaths, branding me a sinner. Once, I was the fish on the chopping block. Now that our positions were reversed, it was quite amusing. Let me calculate, how many more days did he have left to live? Song Fengli was involved with 2 princes. As long as I could prove she was a spy, the emperor would never let her live. Northern Yang was gone. I was Princess Changning, who'd spent 5 years in Northern Yang for the marriage alliance. Was it really so hard to prove someone was a Northern Yang spy? Of course not. After leaving Maple Bridge Villa, I detoured to the Ministry of Justice before returning to the princess mansion. A palace eunuch reported that the second prince's consort had sent an invitation, asking me to attend a flower viewing banquet. I gladly accepted. The emperor had yet to name a crown prince. The two strongest contenders were the first prince and the second prince. First, I needed to confirm, was Song Fengli really connected to the second prince? Was the fourth prince's consort telling the truth? When I arrived, the fourth prince's consort was already there. She chatted and laughed with the second prince's consort, the two of them looking like nothing more than amicable sisters-in-law. The second prince's consort greeted me with a warm smile, showering me with compliments, even calling me a fiery spirit with a laugh. We were in the middle of cheerful conversation when Song Fengli arrived. The fourth prince's consort and I exchanged a look, our expressions changing simultaneously. After all, in everyone's eyes, she was the rival for both of our men's affections. I let out a cold snort. "Miss Song, where is your Meng Huiqing?" Song Fengli looked wronged again, saying softly, "I'm afraid you've misunderstood, Your Royal Highness. In the past, young Master Meng took care of me out of pity and, more importantly, for your sake. Perhaps it was because she had powerful backers now, or perhaps because she thought her schemes were about to succeed. Her courage had grown." She changed the subject abruptly, adding, "You and young Master Meng grew up together, childhood sweethearts with a deep bond. If there are any misunderstandings between you two, you should resolve them as soon as possible." Her words sent me into fits of laughter. I glanced around the room subtly. Almost everyone was watching the show. Amused, only Princess Jiaoning and the fourth prince's consort looked concerned and angry, while the second prince's consort observed us quietly. The fourth prince's consort let out a cold laugh. "Changning is a princess of the imperial household. How could Meng Huiqing ever hope to deserve her?" By saying these words, Miss Song is not belittling Changning, she is belittling the emperor, the empress, and the entire imperial family. The heavy accusation hung in the air. Song Fengli panicked. Hurrying to apologize before retreating awkwardly to the side, I looked at her and the fourth prince's consort, a faint smile playing on my lips. They were soon to share the same husband. For the sake of the fourth prince, they could be rivals or stand on the same side. The fourth prince's consort had extended her olive branch at just the right moment, but I was not so easily persuaded to take it, nor did I need to. I waved at Princess Jiaoning. Better to chat with my kind-hearted little sister instead. Midway through the banquet, a young maid stumbled while serving tea, spilling the liquid on my dress. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. Such a clumsy trick. Was she afraid I wouldn't suspect something was amiss? The second prince's consort reprimanded the maid, apologized to me, and ordered her personal attendant to lead me to a side chamber to change clothes. Princess Jiaoning looked at me anxiously. "Sister Xiangyi, did it burn you?" I smiled at her. "It was only warm water. I'm fine." Princess Jiaoning let out a sigh of relief. I said to her, "Jiaoning, come with me." "Okay." Princess Jiaoning did not suspect a thing, agreeing immediately, but the fourth prince's consort said, "I was just about to ask Jiaoning to play some leaf cards with me. Hurry back, both of you." If she hadn't added that last sentence, I would have suspected her of foul play right then and there. The attendant led us to the side chamber, taking a set of clothes from a maid and handing them to Rongyue. She said respectfully, "Please change, Your Royal Highness. This servant will wait outside the door." Princess Jiaoning scratched her head foolishly. "Sister Xiangyi, I'll wait for you behind the screen." I let out a chuckle. "It's just a little water stain. The wind will dry it in no time." "Her." I put a finger to my lips, signaling her to follow me quietly to the window, not far away. Someone was waiting. Judging by the figure, it was undoubtedly a man. Jiaoning was kind-hearted and naive, but having grown up in the palace, she saw the scene before her and connected it with the earlier details. She could easily guess what was going on. There was a knock on the door. The second prince's consort was worried that your Royal Highness might catch cold, so she ordered this servant to bring a bowl of ginger soup. Romeo opened the door. The visitor was another maid from the second prince's consort's household. I took 2 sips of the soup in front of the maid, then set the bowl casually on the table. The maid said, "Princess Jiaoning, the fourth prince's consort has asked after you twice." I pretended to feel dizzy, putting a hand to my forehead. "Jiaoning, go keep the imperial sisters-in-law company first. I'll rest for a while and join you soon." Jiaoning followed the maid out. It wasn't long before a large crowd came bustling over to look for me. Indecent sounds were coming from the side chamber. The fourth prince's consort asked, "Has Chongning been in the side chamber this entire time?" The second prince's consort said, "It can't be Chongning. Everyone stand back." The crowd murmured among themselves. After all, she spent 5 years in Northern Yang as a peace bride. She's long lost all sense of propriety and shame. She doesn't even filially respect her own parents. The rumors about her must have some truth to them. Who knows? She's not even a real princess anyway. After something like this, how can she still have the audacity to call herself a princess? Behind them, Jiaoning's eyes turned red. She was angrier than I was. I told her not to be angry, then curled my lips into a smile and raised my voice. "I just went looking for all of you. I wondered why everyone was gone, so this is where you all are." Everyone turned around, staring at me in disbelief. The sounds from the side chamber continued to echo out. The 2 princesses consort exchanged a look, their expressions changing drastically as they slammed the door open and rushed inside. True to their status as sisters-in-law, even their expressions and movements were identical. Immediately after, screams erupted from the side chamber. The second prince's consort's maid blocked the door, preventing anyone else from entering, but those at the front of the crowd still caught a glimpse. The 2 people entangled in the side chamber were none other than the second prince and Song Fangli. This entire scene was an elaborate trap, set by multiple players. Song Fangli had long been having an affair with the second prince, through the second prince's eunuch. She had bribed the second prince's consort's personal maid. Her plan was to drug me at the second prince's consort's banquet and put me in the fourth prince's bed. But neither of the 2 princesses' consort were fools. Both of them had found out about this scheme.
I let out a string of cold laughs. "And how long do you think yours will last? You haven't even stepped into the second prince's mansion yet. But even if you do, so what?" She glared at me hatefully, only to be hurried out the door by the wedding matchmaker. I stood under the corridor, watching the scene from a distance. A large crowd of guests had arrived, and my parents were smiling from ear to ear, looking like the cat that got the cream. Romeo cleared her throat, tensing up as if facing a formidable enemy. That was when I noticed Meng Huiqing had approached us without my noticing. He stood beside me, watching the festive and lively scene with a look of melancholy, sighing. "When you left for the marriage alliance, I didn't dare see you off. Now that she is getting married, I still don't dare. When you were in Northern Yang, I was too far away to help you. But the second prince's mansion is in the same imperial capital. From now on, I can protect her quietly, instead of getting angry." I laughed. "Don't come here spewing this nonsense and humiliating yourself. Besides, he wouldn't be able to protect Song Fangli, because I could already hear the sound of hurried footsteps approaching, involving the second prince. The emperor would prioritize protecting his own son and the imperial family's reputation first. He would not let Song Fangli drag the second prince down with her. Thus, the Ministry of Justice would arrive to take Song Fangli away before she even had a chance to leave the mansion for her wedding. Song Fangli screamed, "I am the second prince's secondary consort. How dare any of you lay a hand on me?" The Minister of Justice himself stepped forward. "By order of the emperor, take her away." All the guests who had come to attend the wedding watched in shock as the bride was arrested on the spot. My parents and Meng Huiqing were also taken away in front of everyone. Someone came up to me, asking in a low voice, "Your Royal Highness, what is going on here?" I threw up my hands in a gesture of innocence. It seems the future secondary consort has committed some kind of crime. My parents and Meng Huiqing are deeply implicated with her. So it's only natural that the Ministry of Justice has summoned them for questioning. I have full faith that the Ministry of Justice will get to the bottom of this. The Ministry of Justice worked with remarkable efficiency. I had only provided them with a few clues, half true, half fabricated, but they had followed the leads and uncovered a great many things. Song Fengli really was a spy from Northern Yang. She had first approached the second prince, when the second prince saw her resemblance to me. He had introduced her to Meng Huiqing. From then on, Song Fengli had taken up residence in the Shen mansion, gradually replacing me bit by bit. Using her face that looked so much like mine, she had gained Zhaoning's sympathy, exploiting Zhaoning's guilt towards me to become a beloved guest of the nobility and in the process, stealing countless state secrets. But in the face of absolute power, all these underhanded schemes were nothing but futile. War was ever-changing, and the great general's decisions were always based on the actual situation on the ground. No matter how much information Song Fengli had obtained, she could never have changed the outcome of the war. She had killed all the other Northern Yang spies who knew her true identity, making herself a loyal servant of the second prince. But after I returned to the imperial capital, I made everyone see clearly Song Fengli could never replace me. Her face, which looked so much like mine, was no longer of any use to her. The second prince had wanted to plant her beside the fourth prince, and that was how all the subsequent events had unfolded. A few days later, the Minister of Justice sent someone to inform me that Song Fengli had died in prison. My parents and Meng Huiqing, however, would not be released for the time being. I told the messenger to pass on a message, handle the case according to Great Chu's laws. I would not interfere. In the end, the emperor made the final decision. To protect the second prince, he shifted all the blame onto Song Fengli, the spy. My father was dismissed from his official post, and Meng Huiqing's official career was ruined, but both of them were eventually released unharmed. Every day, my parents came to the gate of the princess mansion, begging for my forgiveness. I waited until the gate was crowded with onlookers, then raised my voice for everyone to hear. You keep calling yourselves my parents, selling your daughter for wealth and glory that I could have overlooked. For the sake of Great Chu, I would have done anything. I went to Northern Yang willingly, but after I fought tooth and nail to make it back alive, you couldn't wait for me to die. Instead, you treated that spy like a precious jewel. Now that you've been implicated by that spy and father has been dismissed from his post, you finally remember my goodness. But where in this world is there such a good deal? I died 1,000 deaths in Northern Yang. I have long since repaid whatever debt I owed you for giving birth to me and raising me. Those were your own words, after all. But unlike you, I am not as heartless. I will send you a monthly allowance for your upkeep. As for how much I would send, and how I would send it, that would depend entirely on my mood. The onlookers murmured among themselves, discussing the matter heatedly. Finally, my parents left, their heads hanging in shame. The Crown Prince and Zhaoning walked over to me. I quickly invited them into the mansion. I had deliberately waited until the crowd was large before speaking because I had received a message from Zhaoning earlier, telling me that the Crown Prince was among the onlookers. The Crown Prince said, Sister Changning, you are a woman who loves fiercely and hates deeply, who values loyalty and righteousness above all else. Your devotion to Great Chu is truly admirable. If you ever need anything in the future, do not hesitate to come to me. Thank you, Your Royal Highness. Since returning to Chu, I have been doing very well. With the Crown Prince's words of support, I would be doing even better from now on. After the Crown Prince took his leave, Zhaoning told me that the second prince had been demoted and exiled to his fiefdom. Both he and the fourth prince were no longer in any position to stir up trouble. I nodded. If I hadn't been absolutely certain of my victory, would I have dared to go up against the imperial princes? All I had to do was hand over the evidence I had against those two princes. The Crown Prince had more reason than anyone else to suppress his rivals. Not long after, news arrived from Maple Bridge Villa. The Marquis of Anley had passed away from illness. The spies he had planted had dragged the imperial princes down into the mud. Do you really think the emperor would have let him live? And so, he was finally dead. As for me, My days of happiness and prosperity were only just beginning.